The Story of St. Nicholas by Mildred Luckhardt, Book 2, How the St. Nicholas Legend Spread. Chapter 1, Stories, Songs, and Pictures about St. Nicholas. Not many years after Bishop Nicholas died, he was called St. Nicholas in various countries. Groups of people in different places chose him for their special protector, their patron saint. The feast of St. Nicholas, December 6th, became a special holiday. Naturally, his name was pronounced somewhat differently in different languages, as for instance, Charles is Carl, Carlos, etc. But no matter how people spoke his name, they loved St. Nicholas. Nobody knows exactly when all the various people chose St. Nicholas for a patron saint, nor just how some stories about him began and grew and spread and became legends. Travelers journeying over deserts and mountains by camel caravans and donkey trains told tales of the friendly saint. Foot travelers resting by village wells in green and sheltered valleys told stories about him to villagers who came to draw water. Sailors sang of him and recounted legends of the wonders that he worked. When a new church was built in Myra, it was named the Church of St. Nicholas. Through the years, hundreds of churches in many different seaports were named for him, for he became the sailors' patron saint. One St. Nicholas church was built during the 11th century in Bari in southern Italy, on a peninsula extending into the Adriatic Sea. It faces the Near East where Nicholas was born. This church of San Nicole is famous for its silver altar and silver ceiling. Thousands of people go there each year for the San Nicole festival, held by sailors and fishermen. Children sing about him in the streets as his statue is brought from the church and carried a short way out to sea. People strew flowers along the road and on the waters as the statue passes by, and at evening they welcome it back with bonfires, torches, and fireworks. When he became the children's patron saint in Greece, girls and boys danced in his honor on the hillsides and along the shores of the sea. In Greek, his name means conqueror of the people, and many agree that he conquered with his kindness. More than 600 years after Nicholas lived in Padua, a Russian ruler called Vladimir the Great married a princess from Constantinople. He became a Christian and built Christian schools in Russia. Then the Russian children heard stories about St. Nicholas, and they were happy to have him for patron saint. Sometimes they found cakes on their windowsills, and their parents said St. Nicholas left those cakes. You know, he always shared his food with other people. Children everywhere enjoyed sitting by the fire on a cold night and hearing about the wonderful things St. Nicholas did. Legends about him spread to Lapland, where reindeer roamed the snowy tundras, forests, and plains. Lapp children were enchanted when a traveler who sought shelter for the night from the icy winds could tell tales of the kind old saint who brought presents to children. Naturally, they thought he rode on a sleigh drawn by reindeer, because that was how people traveled in their part of the world. St. Nicholas became very popular in England too, and in time more than 400 churches were named for him. Even today, in some country places in northern England, when a fine girl who is poor wishes to marry, some kind neighbors give her mysterious presents at night, as Nicholas did for the daughters of the noblemen of Padua. About 700 years ago, when many of the famous cathedrals in Europe were being built, legends about St. Nicholas became connected with some. At that time, a most beautiful cathedral was erected at Chartres in northern France, and many French people gladly worked on the building. Some even harnessed themselves to carts and pulled the gray stone from the quarry for the walls. Sculptors and artists told stories in paintings and stained glass, the most exquisite stained glass ever seen. On the dedication day, in 1260, people thronged the roads to Chartres. Inside the cathedral, they saw windows that told of St. Nicholas and the three maidens of Padua. As they gazed in wonder, the windows, with their marvelous blue glass sections, shone like jewels in the sunlight. The saint and the three girls almost seemed alive. Those who stood admiring the windows caught the glad spirit of giving that spread wherever tales of St. Nicholas were told. On St. Nicholas's Eve, in many European countries, parents helped children set out wooden or leather shoes. While the children slept, the grown people had a good time putting candies, fruits, nuts, and other little gifts into the shoes. Some people think the custom of hanging up stockings to receive presents began in Italy. Others say in Germany or France. Some say that when St. Nicholas threw a dowry through the window, it caught in a stocking drying by the fire, and that's how the custom of hanging up stockings began. Anyway, small Italian and French girls who boarded at convent schools often hung up their stockings. On St. Nicholas Eve, each girl wrote the saint a letter saying she had been good during the year and asking for some special present. Then, while older girls lighted the way with candles, the younger ones hurried down the hall and placed their stockings with notes on them at the door of the abbess in charge of the school. Back to bed they ran, pulled up their covers, and dreamed of St. Nicholas. Sometimes a little girl would lie awake wondering about St. Nicholas. Then suddenly a ray of light would come through the dark as the abbess's door was opened, and the abbess, some of the sisters, and the older girls would fill the stockings, whispering and laughing softly. They were enjoying being St. Nicholas's helpers. The little girl watching understood right then the wonderful secret of St. Nicholas. Knowing the secret made it even better than ever. Next year she would be a helper. School children had fun acting in St. Nicholas plays too. Crowds always came when the play called The Three Daughters was given at the gateway of an abbey. The watchers were breathless when St. Nicholas tiptoed to the house, threw in a dowry, and dashed off without being seen. Everyone cheered and clapped when he was caught after giving away the third dowry. In many places, Christmas preparations began right after St. Nicholas Eve, December 5th. The few weeks before Christmas are called the Advent season. During these days, people prepare for Jesus' birthday with praying, special music and carols, and church services. St. Nicholas has long been considered a messenger to help children make their hearts ready to receive Christ child. Adults everywhere have dressed as St. Nicholas dressed and have visited children on St. Nicholas Eve. In times past, as today, in many villages in Europe, the children wait on the 5th of December for the saint. While waiting, they sing songs that tell how good he was. And finally, the village schoolmaster or some other adult who knows the children well comes in a red robe trimmed with white fur and a tall, ornamented cap called a bishop's mitre. Sometimes he is mounted on a white horse, and he always carries a sack of sweets and other small presents. The children hurry to greet him as he comes to the door. First he talks with them, then he opens his sack and strews out the good things he has brought for the children. In some places, he talks with the children and finds out what they hope the Christ child will give them for Christmas. Then during the night, he leaves small gifts in their shoes or stockings. And on Christmas Eve or Christmas Day, the children receive bigger presents, which they think the Christ child, or Christkind, has given them. The Story of St. Nicholas by Mildred Luckhardt, Book 2, Chapter 2, The Wonderful Legend Comes to America. Several hundred years ago, many children and their families were making a long journey to a new land. They were coming to America to live and make their homes. Among the first people who came were the Dutch, who built homes in the area we call New York, but which they called New Amsterdam. The Dutch children brought with them many of their customs and holidays, and among them was St. Nicholas Day, or Sinterklaas Day, as many called it. Some called him San Nicolas, or San Klaus, or Sint Niklaas. His holiday was the gayest of the whole year in old New Amsterdam. He was the favorite saint of the city, and the first Dutch church in America was named for him. Some people say that his statue was the figurehead on the ship that brought the Dutch here. When December winds whistled across New Amsterdam harbor and rattled the doors of the gay-colored little houses, the Dutch children helped their mothers make Sinterklaas cakes. And on St. Nicholas Eve he would come, just as he had in Holland, bringing them gifts and candy. Good children put oats and carrots in their shoes for his horse. Everyone loved the happy excitement of St. Nicholas Day in New Amsterdam, and naturally, after some years, when English children arrived, they too wanted to share in the good time and the gifts. Since they did not wear wooden shoes, their parents suggested they hang their stockings by the fireplace. In the New World, as he had done in the Old World, St. Nicholas came in different ways. Germans in Pennsylvania farmlands called him Pelznickel, Nicholas dressed in fur, and he blustered into their farmhouses on a wintry evening. As people came from many countries, they brought to the United States a great variety of holiday customs. In time, these customs mingled together. Whereas children from many places received small gifts on St. Nicholas Eve, some also received bigger surprise presents on Christmas, some on New Year, and others on January 6th, which they call Epiphany, or Three Kings Day. In time, a number of people agreed that Jesus' birthday was the perfect day for the presents, although, of course, the pleasant custom of receiving small gifts on St. Nicholas's Eve was also continued by many. At first, Puritan children in New England did not celebrate Christmas with music and excitement and gifts, but on Christmas Day they shared with the poor. After a while, though, the New England joined the whole country in celebrating Christmas as the most heartwarming time of year. The Story of St. Nicholas by Mildred Luckhardt, Book 2, Chapter 3. Here Comes Santa Claus. Legends about St. Nicholas were not the only tales about December holidays that came from everywhere to America. There were many stories about a kind old man who gave surprise presents to children. Some called him Father Christmas, or the Christmas Man, or the Yule Man, or Bonhomme Noel, or other names. During December, people in cold countries have always built cheery fires on their hearths and gathered around to enjoy the warmth and friendliness. Centuries ago, people in Germany and various parts of Northern Europe used to think a good-natured, blustering old man rode down from the north through the air in a chariot, fighting the giants of ice and snow with the warmth of fire. They called him the god Thor and believed that, although they could not see him, he came down their chimneys into their home fires, making everyone cheerful and friendly. If people had quarreled, they were expected to make up and become friends again by their warm December firesides. Some thought, too, that another good spirit of the home, Hertha, gently drifted down to their hearths on the smoke of their fir and pine branch fires. So out of many old tales from the old world came a new, jolly fairy tale person as part of the Christmas celebration in this new world. This new pretend person was called Santa Claus, which of course is one of St. Nicholas's names. Since St. Nicholas had shown how to give presents without telling, especially to children, Santa Claus began to do the same, and copying St. Nicholas legends, people caught the spirit of giving secretly and began acting the part of Santa Claus. Even though Santa Claus was not really St. Nicholas, but a gay Christmas symbol of the way St. Nicholas gave, children often spoke of him as St. Nicholas. Of course, they wondered how he looked and traveled. At first, some children thought he rode a white pony. Many Dutch children in America said he rode over rooftops in a wagon drawn by horses. Probably children from Scandinavia and nearby snowy regions said he came by reindeer sleigh. And they may have thought, too, he came by way of the North Pole. Two little girls in New York were talking about such things one morning before Christmas, more than 100 years ago. "Let's ask Father," the taller one suggested. So they ran down to breakfast calling, "Good morning, Father. Please tell us what St. Nicholas looks like and how he comes to us." Their father, Dr. Clement Moore, smiled. He'd often seen pictures of the brave, kind Bishop Nicholas, but he realized the girls wanted to know about the make-believe Santa Claus. As Dr. Moore stirred his coffee, his eyes twinkled. He had an idea. "On Christmas Eve, I'll tell you how he looks," he promised. A verse already was beginning to run through his mind. However, not until Christmas Eve, as he drove home through the snowy streets with presents for his children hidden in the sleigh, did Dr. Moore really know just how the poem should go. People passed in the frosty evening calling "Merry Christmas" to one another. Children in some houses were already hanging stockings by the fire. All of this helped him as he drove on, making up his verse to the tune of the sleigh bells. When he reached home, he hurried to the library to write his poem down, calling to his children, "After supper, I'll have something to read you." As soon as supper was over, the girls hung up their stockings. Then they curled in chairs by the fire, ready to listen. Their father began. "'Twas the night before Christmas, when all through the house not a creature was stirring, not even a mouse." The girls were delighted and listened to every word that followed. They giggled and nodded about. "A miniature sleigh with 8 tiny reindeer, with a little old driver so lively and quick, I knew in a moment it must be St. Nick." When their father finished, they danced around and clapped their hands. What a fun story that was. Although Dr. Moore thought little more about it, a friend had the poem printed the next Christmas Eve, 1823, in a newspaper in Troy, New York, under the title, "A Visit from St. Nicholas." Before long, it began to be printed in children's books and illustrated with pictures. One day, about 40 years later, some children saw a picture drawn by a man named Thomas Nast. In the picture, Santa Claus sat on a box marked North Pole, smiling as children came to see him from all over the world. Immediately, children who saw it said, "Santa Claus's workshop is at the North Pole. That's where he keeps the reindeer and sleigh." They began addressing letters to him at the North Pole, as boys and girls still do today. All through Advent season, children everywhere make ready for the mysterious beauty of Christmas Eve. On that evening, candles glow in windows all over the world to welcome the Christ child on his birthday. Then children everywhere, in busy seaports or quiet mountain villages, in big houses or tiny cottages, listen gladly to the story of the baby in the manger and the angel songs of peace and goodwill. They gaze at the stars in the Christmas sky and think of the wise men who followed a star to Jesus. Then they hang up their stockings or set out their shoes and jump into bed to dream of what Santa Claus will bring. And Santa Claus comes in the form of someone who loves children and gives without telling, just as St. Nicholas gave long ago. The end.